Yesterday I did a video talking about GShocks and whether they represented a kind of fashion watch for watch geeks. You guys responded and it's been incredible and it's really complicated. And I wanted to jump in really quickly with kind of a follow-up to that video. Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. First things first, I've found when increasingly I end videos with questions to you, the audience, about what did you think, have you got ideas, have I got something wrong? And I've often responded to those comments individually in the comments below. I'll keep doing that, but as the channel is growing, thank you very much, the number of comments is growing and the amount of time I can spend typing is obviously shrinking. And I don't expect you to go through all the comments. So what I'm going to start doing are quick follow-ups to these videos where I kind of wrap up some of the comments and put back to you what you guys told me. And often you ask me a question in follow-up and I can answer that and so on. Now, I will normally wait longer than 24 hours to do that. I'm jumping in really fast now for a very specific reason. Tomorrow, I'm planning on dropping another video. It's a spotter's guide to horology gatekeepers, those self-appointed masters of the gate who decide what's in and out. And the irony that I had effectively come very close to doing that in my own video by using the word fashion watch as a slur was not lost on me. So I figured I'd jump in really fast and say, put a video between my GShock, is a GShock a fashion watch, and how to spot gatekeepers by putting my hand up and going, yeah, I don't think I was a gatekeeper, but let's say I was gatekeeper adjacent. I was skirting close. And your responses made me think in future, I'm going to use the word fashion watch much more carefully. But anyway, all that set aside, you can see the next video when it comes out next, probably tomorrow, maybe the day after. Nothing with, and now a quick wrap up on some of your comments about GShocks. And what I learnt was GShocks are really complicated. Some of you, actually one or two of you, came straight out and said they're not watches, they're something else. And you know what, I can kind of see where those people are coming from. In a world where the standard wristwatch, the thing that we all wear, has reduced now down to more like a kind of jewelry, something which remains purely a tool almost isn't a wristwatch anymore. It's, oh, I've got one here. So many of you talk about using a GShock more like I would use this, my Garmin. And in a sense, I don't think of that as a watch. I've got a box of stuff I call my watches and my Garmin. I don't think of that. That's wearable tech. And it's interesting. I think a lot of you kind of looked at, and at some level, you're kind of looking at your GShocks the same way. Tennessee Mike on a separate video did an interesting thing where he said, you know, how many watches have you got in your collection? By the way, GShocks don't count. And whilst flippant and a joke, there's an interesting little truth in that for some people there is their watches and then their GShocks. And I think that was not an uncommon idea, that whether they're a completely separate category or whether they're a kind of watch but very different to every other watch was a very common sentiment. There is something kind of special about a GShock. For many people, it isn't just another watch. It truly is something different, which was a question I asked, and thank you, you all answered it. I think for some of you, it's just another watch. It's just like everything else. Some people bemoaned the fact that in the kind of reviews I was calling out, it wasn't treated like a Rolex, wasn't treated like anything else, and thought that it should have been tested just like everything else. But to be honest, that was a really small number. Very few people said that. The vast majority of people kind of either rolled with the idea that it is a kind of a special category of watch, which is allowed to be treated a bit differently. There was another category of people, though, that were actually taught me something, and that is that there is a parallel watch universe that I was not aware of. I followed some of the links. I did a search for some of the channels that you guys called out, which were dedicated GShock guys, and man, that's a rabbit hole I am not going to go down. One, because I just didn't find it that interesting, and two, I have no idea where the bottom would get to. But yeah, so thank you. I missed that there is this parallel GShock YouTube where people go into extraordinary depths about how this all works, and I was totally unaware that there's these kind of intersecting circles of watch folk, GShock folk, and some people in the middle. I was definitely not one of them, not going to be one of them, but I'm glad to know that there is actually a dedicated GShock community out there, which seems to actually have members that have essentially no crossover to the more traditional watch YouTubers, which again reinforces this idea that there is in fact something special about GShocks. Last of all, one of you asked, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name offhand, but one of you asked if I had any interest in, now that I've done all this research, any interest in buying a GShock? No, I don't. It's still, the only way I would see a GShock as something that I really wanted to be attracted to was if I went kind of down the Garmin route. If I started seeing GShocks as strict tools, I can see that attraction, but then that's what my Garmins do, and the Garmins connect to everything so much better and so much easier, and they fit into that big sort of fitness ecosystem. That GShock may one day, they're bringing out their new application, their new smartwatch fit type things. Maybe one day they'll get there, but at the moment I don't think they fit in. They certainly don't have the huge infrastructure around them like Garmin and all those guys do. So no, maybe one day if GShock go into that field and stop being watches but become wearable tech, that might be something that I'm interested in. But whilst they're still basically watches, I can't see myself with a GShock. Finally, there was one comment that really caught my eye, which was someone brought out that if I'm talking about GShocks, it was interesting that I didn't even mention Edifice, which is kind of like another part of the Casio, GShock and Edifice brand. And that got me thinking about all of those offshoots of brands that we just don't talk about. So yeah, you're right. No watch YouTuber seems to, well, at least not in any of the mainstream ones. Maybe if I go down the parallel YouTube path, which I'm not going to bother trying to, maybe I would find Edifice reviewers there. But yeah, Edifice watches don't seem to be on any enthusiast's radar. But I would say that that's interesting because there's a lot of companies with that. You know, Citizen famously have a whole sections of their catalog that no one talks about. But even in Seiko, there's, at least within the mainstream watch community, again, maybe there's a parallel universe where people are talking about Culturas and Astrons. But I'll do some research, but right now I'm not aware of it. Certainly none of the standard watch YouTubers that you see talk about those things. So yeah, that would be interesting to one day think about all of the watch brands that are out there that have got kind of that embarrassing cousin that we don't talk about. That might be a future video. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to get back to you and say thank you very much for your report, your comments. You've shown me so much I wasn't even aware of. It is clear that GShocks are a bit different, and yes, I am aware that by using that fashion label as a kind of slur. I was possibly being exactly the sort of guy I don't want to be. So you don't need to point that out to me because I've already worked it out for myself. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches, and I'll catch you later. Bye.